I almost feel guilty for robbing everybody of that great discussion of the radio industry. People should be allowed to hear these great things. Oh God. Is everybody all ready to?
I want to talk about that game with the girls where they didn't call that thing that happened at the end of that thing. That was like a big thing.
People should be allowed to hear these. Women are too emotional. They're always complaining about stuff.
Yeah.
You never hear guys. We went to this bar in Kansas City one time, and of course, it had a picture of Lou Piniella throwing a fit and crying over a call, and it said, "Women are too emotional to be in sports," or something like that. Was the caption on it.
Well, that wasn't nice. That was not fair.
Yeah. All right, I'm there. I want you to weigh in on the Lil Nas X controversy about this shoe. I think I need you to really lean into this. We got to really cover this.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of thing that is so irrelevant.
So too stupid.
It's one, it's too stupid to talk about, and three, it's too irrelevant, and four, I don't care about it, so we're not talking about it.
I can't work. It was so unbelievable that the Twitter got really upset about that one.
Yeah. Twitter can go fuck itself. Okay, ready?
I'm ready when you are.
Hang on. What was the famous O'Reilly meltdown clip when he was on? What was he mad about? When
he was having to do a tape. They were asking him to do something at the end of a show, and he wasn't familiar with it. It was like it was like a new Sting cut. It was a new Sting track he was supposed to play at the end of Current Affair or whatever the fuck that show was.
Okay, all right. It is the Brad and Britt cast, our second one for the week. We're glad you're with us live in the 1:30 hour Eastern time on various platforms, including Unarmed Forces Radio. That's right. If you're overseas and you're just a civilian, you're part of our unarmed forces, and you can hear us today.
Isn't that the dream of the left, to make them unarmed forces?
Yeah.
Isn't that on Fox News tonight on the stupid Tucker Carlson show? Yeah. They're trying to make them into the unarmed forces.
Let's talk here for a moment, if we can, about the idea that we really are going to need some vaccination identification going forward.
Okay.
To prove that we're vaccinated, so that concerts and movies and theme parks and everything else can open just a bit more safely going forward, knowing
I think we're
full
for
well
that.
that if you can't show that you have been vaccinated, then you have to step to the side and leave and come back, and we'll give you a coupon for $3. There's some way to mitigate when they have to kick people out. But
when I was after I got the second shot, the woman comes up to me in the recovery area and she goes, "Make sure you take a picture of your card so that you can have it in the cloud or whatever. If you ever have to show it in an airport or something, you'll have it with you in case you lose the little physical card." That's what the woman said to me. I don't know if they said that to you when you got yours.
No, they didn't say it. You know what I did? And apparently there are a couple things here, and we'll get back to my main point, which I'd probably take 20 minutes to get to anyway.
Yes.
We're perfectly within our bounds to sidetrack ourselves. Okay, and you should be joining in on that. Apparently, you're not supposed to laminate it. Take it to
really
someplace and put official, because down the road you may have to get a booster shot. And
interesting.
Now, what I did is I took, and I'm a professional at this. I've been doing this for years with lots of things like that. I took Scotch magic tape Here's some right here in a dispenser. There it is.
Oh yeah, for everybody to see.
And I put it all around the card perfectly. And of course, now on Scotch Magic tape, you can still write. Okay,
you could, yeah.
About that.
You could, yeah.
Still write. Which, by the way, when that came out, when that was invented, it was the biggest deal.
Really,
there's one of the most unheralded, kind of brilliant inventions ever. Because up until then, I don't know if I was in second grade or what. Whenever it happened,
right?
It was brilliant because up until then, all you had was that the regular Scotch tape, which of course turned into that famous piece on Saturday Night Live in the first few years, the Scotch Tape Store. Look that one up if you haven't seen it.
It's a classic. And of course,
Scotch Tape Store.
Scotch Magic Tape invented by Michael Nesmith's mom from the Monkees. That was what. Oh no, sorry. No. Further distraction. Get back to your point.
And I don't think you can white out on Scotch tape.
No, you can't.
So the point. Anyway, so we've got our little cards here, and we're good. And what has this turned into? Guess what? Left versus right, conservatives versus liberals, the oppression of the unvaccinated by the vaccinated, the looking down at people who don't have a vaccination and discriminating against them. And wait, there's more. You ready? It's how come the same people who are against voter ID are for vaccination ID? What a bunch of hypocrites. Okay, so now I've laid out the idiocy.
That is the idiocy of it.
But wait, hang on.
There's more.
We're having dessert, and what do you have to always put on top of the dessert at the end? A cherry.
Put a cherry.
Ready? This is like 1937 Nazi Germany, where you had to identify yourself as a Jew. And this is the same thing. You're going to
this is a tattoo on your wrist, identifying you as a Jew or a gypsy or a gay, right?
Right. So let's work backwards and start with that one on why having a vaccination card, a little card that says you've been vaccinated, is not equivalent to show us your papers. Are you a Jew? If you are, you may step on the train to the left. If you're not, you may go home and cook dinner to the right. Okay, it's obviously not the same. It has nothing to do with anything.
Why is it not the same? Explain to people, really kind of break this down as to why it's not the same.
I don't have to, because it's not.
Is it because the people who got the tattoos on their arms went and got gassed and then were murdered and their entire families were murdered? Is that part of the reason it's not the same?
Right.
I mean, if I had to guess.
Right. And if I can borrow the idiotic argument from a few moments ago, the people who are saying that voter ID is definitely the greatest thing in the history of the world will always point to you have to have ID to buy beer. Well, I don't, you don't, but people who look 20
exactly.
Do. But we all don't have to have it. And you have to have it to get on an airplane and things. And by the way, the argument on air travel works in reverse, because we have all said, hey, you know what? That's for public safety. That's for everybody's good. We have consensus that to make air travel safer than it was before 9/11, we need to be able to, is it a perfect list? By the way, we haven't had any planes fly into any buildings for 20 years, just in case anybody hasn't noticed. But has anybody equated getting on an airplane and having to show an ID with Nazi Germany? The answer is no, because it isn't. It isn't. And in this case, public health in general is even a wider net, a wider scope of endeavor than flying on an airplane. Flying on an airplane is very voluntary. So is going to a concert or somewhere else.
That's true.
But
going to a restaurant, you don't have a right to go into a restaurant, eat in a restaurant. There's no constitutional right to that.
Of course not. And right now, I think New York State is at the forefront on this one, and they're not working with the federal government. I think they're working with Google or someone like that to oh, we can't trust Google. Hey, guess what? They already know if you've been on the internet for 5 minutes in the last 25 years, your shit's already moving around. So please, not with the vaccination.
We can't trust Google. Like half of the businesses in America have some sort of cloud storage or something with Google. Like officially, they pay them money. If they don't, can't trust Amazon. Well, guess what? Most of the web services on most of the businesses in America are dealing with, and a lot of government too, Amazon servers. That's how it works. Sorry.
Right. And it's such an obvious thing. And again, apparently we cannot learn. We cannot learn from other countries on something like this.
No.
We're not allowed to, because we're the United fucking States of America, land of free morons and home of idiots. Because I'm sure, and I mean, look this up. I'll bet if I look it up, it'll be true. But I don't know that it's true. I just think it is. I'm guessing that Israel, which is one of the model countries in terms of how they've approached this, I'll bet you that they require people to prove that they've been vaccinated. Although they've probably gotten close to herd immunity in the country. They
Very
may
close.
not even need it soon.
Right.
But we're not even close to that yet. And to me, that is the most simple, basic public health measure we can take. It should go along with the famous wash your hands, social distance, wear a mask, and make sure you have your ID with you. I don't know whether this happens to you a lot, but every once in a while, I still walk out of the house and I forget the mask. And if I haven't put a bunch in the car, I do have to walk back in the house.
Yeah.
One happened to me the other day. Big
deal. It happens. It's stores and stuff where I kind of walk out. Shit, I don't have. But I, like you say, I've got 2 or 3 in the car usually at any given time, and I grab one and go back in. Yeah.
And the very idea that everybody isn't going to benefit from showing vaccination IDs and having the reassurance that the people around you really did it. Oh wait, I got another argument against it. You ready? You know, Britt, the amount of fraud, the black market in false identification. Now think about it, and I know that we can go back to one of my original theses of more than 20 years ago, which is that the internet will ruin the world. Okay?
Yeah,
and that would be kind of connected to that. But so we have people in this country, ready? We have people in this country that would rather go to the pain and suffering and take the time to get a fake ID to show that they got a vaccination when they didn't get the vaccination, as opposed to just getting it, which very soon, if not now, in a lot of places, is just like walking into a drugstore and buying a pack of gum. It's going to be that easy really soon. So the black market argument, I think, is pretty stupid too.
Well, you could fake it. I'm sure if any 14-year-old with a computer would be able to get that CDC thing and then white it out and put. I mean, I'm sure that could happen if you really wanted to. But there wasn't they did their best to standardize the form with a little card, but every different health department and entity that I've seen had a different way of. Mine had a little stamp on it. Yours had a little stamp on it. Sometimes they initialed it. It looked very different. But if you're just going to go to all that, why don't you just go ahead and just get the shot? It is a lot of.
I don't think that's not going to be the issue. It's going to be electronic. It's going to be on your phone.
I hope so.
Let's pick a company that we all have dealt with over many, many years that figured out a way several years ago to embed into your phone an absolute solid, almost unbreakable method of identification. The answer is Ticketmaster. Isn't it Ticketmaster figured that out when they first started? I thought, how are they ever going to do this? And they did it.
Yeah.
You buy a ticket now, and they send you the code, and it's got that barcode thingy.
It's the barcode, right?
Whatever it is, and it works. You go to a concert, you hold up your phone, and wham, it right in. And clearly, there's no doubt about the fact that this could be done, maybe not exactly like that, And by the way, I don't want Ticketmaster to be involved because it'll cost me $3 every time I go into a store.
Exactly. Yeah. You'll never be able to transfer.
You see what I did there? You see,
Well, don't we get to,
people think Ticketmaster cards they're too expensive and they charge too much. You know that one, Kevin?
don't you think that, don't we get some pushback from this thing as the mark of the beast people, as far as the card itself being some sort of iteration of the mark of the beast? Aren't the religious idiots doing some of that stuff as well?
I haven't heard that, but doggone it, I like it.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I mean, they've also tried to do it with the shot itself, that's the mark of the beast. Everything is the mark of the beast to these people.
Right. But we cannot do anything in this country if everything is subject to veto by the biggest idiots in the country.
Really?
It can't work that way. That
Really?
would be the tyranny of the minority on everything, right? So if one person can figure out how to break the unbreakable code to get a fake vaccination ID on their phone, if one person can do it, then we shouldn't do it at all for the 329 million other people, right? Isn't that, which by the way is one of the arguments for all the fake voter integrity measures, because in the last 20 years they found, I think, like 120 verified cases of in-person voter fraud,
and most of them were Republicans. Most of them were Republicans doing it,
and so the percentages are like 0.000001, and because of that, in addition to other things, we've got to institute just draconian measures to make sure that those votes never change the outcome of an election or anything else.
And none of this stuff would have prevented any of that stuff, just like they say with the guns. Like, none of the stuff that they're talking about now would have prevented, like, the fraud that happened in North Carolina where they harvested all those ballots and shit, right? None of that stuff. It is worth reminding that the biggest case of voter fraud we've had this century in North Carolina involved Republicans, 100%. So I mean, it's all of this.
But that just shows, Britt, that shows the integrity of the Republican Party, that they would realize.
Right.
Okay, I'll stop right there. I'll just stop right there.
There is some more. There does continue to be at least some more public sentiment that Delta, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, and a lot of those other companies we talked about on yesterday's Brad and Britt cast should probably do something other than issue namby-pamby public relations sentiments and statements that don't really say anything, and that they should actually get in the game and really talk about how the vote in Georgia is being preempted and it's being narrowed down to where only white folks and property owning white males are going to vote. So there does seem to be some renewed calls for people to, I don't know, boycott those, or at least put some pressure on those companies we talked about yesterday to get in the game and show something, some balls, other than those PR statements that were vetted by lawyers that, as I said, didn't really say anything.
Well, one of the more idiotic aspects of those statements that you're talking about, in addition to playing obvious both sidesism and whataboutism games, right? We all want the votes to count and all that, is saying that, well, from now on, we're just not going to contribute to political action committees at all.
Right.
At all. No, that's not the answer. The answer is you pick out the candidates who support suppressing the vote, who voted for those provisions, and you stop contributing to them, which really means you stop initially contributing anything to the Republican Party at all, up and down the board. That would be a good start. They probably won't do that, though. They're just going to issue, down the middle, irrelevant, don't take a side kind of platitudes like we've been seeing the last few days. So
there are various calls for boycotts. As I Google this, they're talking about Georgia black clergymen are urging a Coca-Cola boycott. The same thing for Delta. I don't know what Home Depot, but they're facing some criticism over this as well. I mean, people should not stand for this, and these guys have already shown, that at least allegedly have some sort of sensitivity to the voters and stuff like that. I think people should definitely show the displeasure at this. These guys need to get in the game. This is not, again, this is very much like the Trump era. You can't just sit on the sidelines and all of a sudden be Switzerland. I mean, you're involved, particularly if you're a company in Georgia. The Coca-Cola issue to me is the one that's most interesting, because at a time when a lot of people didn't want to get involved in the apartheid thing, they were heavily anti-apartheid. And it has, if you go to South Africa, the Coca-Cola brand is ubiquitous. It has, brand loyalty has been there for well over a generation of folks. And we're still thankful to Coca-Cola for opposing apartheid.
That's the interesting part of this, because it's hard to believe, but sometimes doing the right thing is actually a good thing for your business. It actually doesn't hurt you. It would help you. And I'm not saying that any of these companies should do that as a clear-cut business decision thing. Oh, this will help us down the road. But you know what? That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you made the calculation that you're better off. Let's wind the clock back to 1962. 1962, John F. Kennedy is the president, and he is proposing civil rights legislation, which he will never see come to fruition because he gets assassinated the next year. I wonder, and I don't know if we could even find this, whether at that time, Coca-Cola, which, you know, they've been around for more than 100 years. It's not like it was some kind of new thing in Atlanta in the 1960s. What was their stance then? South Africa is one thing, okay? Because you know what? It's South Africa. It's way over there.
Exactly.
This is here, and this is now. And I wonder what the corporate, and not just Coke, and this is all over the country, civil rights, it wasn't just a Georgia thing then. But I wonder where corporate America was then. And I know it's not the same as it is now, but you know, in a lot of ways, it kind of is. And you know, we talk about well, companies used to be more paternalistic. They used to
there was an agnosticism, I thought, with politics back during those. Now that's what I've been taught, and that's my perception. I don't know if that in fact was true.
I wonder if that's as true as we think it is.
Right.
Because you know, hey, Bill Russell was still better than anybody that plays today. I'm sorry.
At least defensively, that's true. Yeah, I'll say he played better defense than anybody that's on the court today.
He was a winner in his time. That's all that matters.
I'll give you. No, it's. I mean, I think it's somewhat mythology, but our political system has always demanded and needed money in order to make it happen. It's always needed corporate money, and corporate money has always been involved. So I wonder, you know, and I think it was very much the corporate money that was behind that Nixon comeback. There were a lot of people in corporate America, especially in some of the big oil companies, and I think in maybe even in some of the big car companies, when Nixon came back, that were like, yeah, let's give this guy another look. I think that we need this guy back in. So I think that happened, but I can't really find any information on Coca-Cola as they were back in the 60s. But, you know, I don't know if they were saying the right thing, or at least, you know, putting their money where their mouths was, or any of that stuff. But we are in clearly a different era. And these companies it became very fashionable about a year ago for them to go, you know, this Black Lives Matter thing, I think we really need to get behind this. I think we really need to do this. And they just cannot mouth platitudes toward that. It didn't just start on May the 25th, and it didn't end at the end of the Donald Trump presidency. You got to kind of walk it.
Think of the kind of advertising that we're going to see going into the summer, and just put aside the fact that the Olympics are going to be fucked up because there's going to be no spectators, and
absolutely.
But they're pushing through with it so that they can have a big TV show. And all that money will still flow, just like professional sports in the United States had to keep going forward. So that's not true, T. Barry.
See, disagree with me that way. He's telling Coke to get on board and do the right thing. Good for him.
Yeah. But very often during the Olympics, companies like Coca-Cola and Nike and, you know, McDonald's, the big worldwide advertisers, they like to run the I'd like to teach the world to sing. Warm, fuzzy. If the world could just get together and get along the way the athletes get along, and with what's going on in the United States with voting rights, boy, that sure undercuts any ability to play that game and show that face of American capitalism to the world. I think we're so wrapped up in our own little world. I mean, we're in North Carolina, Georgia. We could drive there, in 5 hours. We could be right there. It's our own little world. The entire planet sees what we do.
Yeah.
They realize what we're doing very often better than we do. They're fully aware of race relations in the United States. They know what's going on. They know how this undercuts our face to the world and how we have any credibility telling any other country to do anything in terms of human rights, because we're a human rights abuser in this country, and it's state sanctioned by one of its major, hopefully soon to not be major, political parties. It is a human rights abuse. If these kinds of voting restrictions were laid on people in other countries that way, legally, which is equivalent to, well, the mass murder, the gun he bought was legal. Which do you feel better when you hear that the gun was legal or that the gun might have been stolen? I don't know which makes me feel better.
Doesn't
when
matter.
A mass shooting.
It doesn't really matter.
Does it? Right.
No, but
Right.
you, in terms of making this something that you can use in a commercial or something, the visuals on this aren't as cute. When you turn the hoses on somebody or you put your knee on somebody's neck, you can show the picture of that, and it's very clear to people, oh, that shouldn't be happening. This is a little more pernicious, and it's kind of under the. You could show people in line, you can do that and stuff, but it's a little bit harder to show and to boil down to a 30-second statement that will shame Coke or Delta or Home Depot or whoever into action.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree. You don't have to have the visuals of someone waiting in line to vote, have them pulled out of the line, and have someone put a knee on them and asphyxiate them so they can't vote. It doesn't have to be that. It's there. It's front page news all over the country. It's one of the top legislative priorities in almost every
It is,
state
but the bullshit
country.
permeations of, oh, it's just everybody's got an ID, and don't you think everybody should have an ID? And oh my God, there's so much fraud, and people aren't following this closely, and the stuff that's able to be reframed as, oh, it's just common sense. It's just common sense that people should have to vote in person. You can't vote through the mail. Anybody can get a hold of that ballot and mail it in. So you're able to the bullshit social media mainly permutations of, oh yeah, this makes sense to me.
I disagree. I disagree. And there is a piece by Jane Mayer in the New Yorker right now, and I don't know how she finds this shit out, but she does. And she says at the beginning of the year, the Republicans had a meeting, and of course we're not supposed to know about it. And they were all rolling their eyes, saying, "Fuck, we can't defend this shit. We can't defend this voting shit. We can't do it. We can't."
And yet,
so what they do, so of course in public they do so. So I don't think for 1 second that we should ever think about throwing up our hands and say, well, they can get away with it because people are stupid and they'll believe anything the Republicans say about voter ID and dishonest vote, and Trump really won the. No, we can't do that.
Well, you're just seeing in the beginning of it, they're about to go whole hog in Florida. They're about to make Georgia look like a bunch of pikers in Florida, which is a much bigger state, obviously. I mean, it's the hit record that they're playing to win the next election because they know they can't win based on the number of votes.
But you know what? George Wallace stood in front of the schoolhouse door.
Yeah.
And it did not stand. And you know why it didn't stand? Because Dwight Eisenhower sent federal troops there. Now, I'm not telling that Joe Biden is going to have to send federal troops to the state house in Georgia to fix it. I'm not saying that, but
this is
they are overplaying their hand on this, and everyone can see what it is. And here's the thing: we have to roll back at least a couple years, even to 2018. Before that election, 2018, the midterms, this was already in full progress in a lot of states, including North Carolina, with voter ID. And people were wondering, is this going to save it for the Republicans and for Trump in the midterms? And it did not matter. It was overcome all over the country in all kinds of states, including red states. It was overcome. And then it was overcome in 2020. And Republicans, whether they want to admit it or not, they know that these tactics ultimately do not work, but they can't help themselves. They cannot help. They think that this is all they've got left. And you know what? They're kind of right. They can't win elections by saying our ideas are better than your ideas. No, they know that the only way that they're going to win elections in the main long term is to get a smaller voting percentage out of the overall population that largely will knock out all the traditional groups that vote Democratic way more than they do. However, as far as absentee ballots goes, with older people in particular, I'm sure just as many old Republicans have been voting absentee. I think that's been shown. In other words, in the end, it doesn't work. And
except that the Republicans gained seats in the House of Representatives, and they almost regained control of the Senate. They almost, except for that. I'm sorry, but it almost worked.
Well, but that wasn't. Now, look, in Orange County, 6 seats or so flipped back, not because of onerous voting regulations. That
it's anecdotal, but it's anecdotal, but it's anecdotal, but the tactics in general helped.
It's a fact.
It's anecdotal, but the tactics the Republicans use helped them increase seats in the House of Representatives in 2020. So it wasn't exactly overcome. We got the presidency back. We were able to get the Senate because Donald Trump decided to tell people in Georgia that election was a fraud, and he bitched about how the fact that he didn't lose the election. But yes, they're still gaining. The Republican Party, and it's not over either, by the way. These people are still doing what they're doing, and like I said, not only in Georgia, you want to go after some companies that are based in Florida? I think they've got a couple of companies that are based in Florida, and Florida is about to do this as well. You might want to start turning to that. I think there's a company called Disney that has some pretty big operations in Florida last time I checked. And do you think they're going to try to get involved in this? Because they've tried to fake it too with the Black Lives Matter thing. They've tried to act like they are woke. We're going to see how woke they are when DeSantis starts throwing down the hammer, because DeSantis wants to be in the White House. He wants to be the new Donald Trump. He's not even being cute about that. There's nothing subversive about it at all. So they're still going forward with all of this stuff, as horrified as they are about this shit. That it's their only chance of continuing to perpetuate the Republican Party is to do this stuff.
Let me just school you here for a second. As you know, I am a Disney shareholder.
Yes,
and I hold the Disney shares so I can go to the corporate meeting every year.
Yeah,
and re-express my anger over gay days. I'm still upset over that.
That was again.
Remember that?
Oh my God. That was not only do I remember it, I mean, what you're seeing now with the culture wars, I mean, that's the grandson of shit like that. Absolutely 100%. The culture warriors still go on with that stuff. This is from the Jane Mayer article that you were talking about, a recording obtained by the New Yorker of a private conference call, January the 8th. Remember, Brad, that was just 2 days after, some.
Wait, stop. I'll let you finish this. That is what almost knocked me off my chair.
January the 8th.
This happened 2 days. So if we think for 1 second that it took a few weeks, a few months now for this idea of amnesia and moving on and pretending it didn't happen and pretending it was shit. Some of these people probably still had bruises on them from tripping over chairs and tripping over desks.
Wipe that blood off your. Could you wipe that blood off your shirt and let's go?
Right. So this is 2 days later. Go.
Between the policy advisor to Senator Mitch McConnell and the leaders of several prominent conservative groups, including one run by the Koch brothers network, reveals that the participants worry that the proposed election reforms garner too much support, not just from liberals, but also from conservative voters too. The speakers on the call expressed alarm at the broad popularity of the bill's provision, calling for more public disclosure.
Let me stop you. What she's referring to HR 1. She's talking about the Democrats' big voter rights bill.
And it's just too popular.
Right. That's what
we're scared to death. This is too popular. The participants conceded that the bill, which would stem the flow of dark money from such political donors as Charles Koch, was so popular that it wasn't worth trying to mount a public advocacy campaign to shift opinion. Let me translate that. We're not even going to try to lie about this thing. We're not even going to try to kill it by lying about it. Instead, we just have to do what you did with the Supreme Court nomination of Merrick Garland. Kill it. Kill it, Mitch McConnell. You have to kill it in vitro right now. We can't let this go to the floor because it's too damn popular. The American people want this.
This is the perfect example of you can't have these on one hand, this, on the other hand, this. Let's pick one and have a democracy. No, this is about the fact that in this country, very often, there is broad consensus on a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And this is actually one of them. But we have an antediluvian, mostly white only party that is shrinking in size and in influence. And so they keep changing the rules of the game and moving the sidelines in and doing all these things through these kinds of laws that are being passed around the country to try to maintain their lead. It would be as if in football, the Republican team has now passed a rule. The rule is when we score a touchdown, it's worth 6 points. When you guys score a touchdown, it's worth 5. Okay? Which is actually a pretty good analogy because, as you know, because of the distorted system that we have, including the U.S. Senate, the Electoral College, gerrymandering, and the like, Democrats have to win by much larger margins all over the country than Republicans do.
Yeah.
In order to maintain power or control over all kinds of things that are voted on. They just do. It's just that's the way it works because the Republicans have it fixed in their favor. They're doing it, and they're doing it right now. And the bill that was proposed in North Carolina the other day on gerrymandering, you want to talk? I mean, it is so not obnoxious. It's so reasonable that, of course, it has no chance to pass because Republicans always will oppose this if they have the majority. And the Democrats are in charge. They'd be against it. Shut up. That's not the point. That is not the point. This is a redistricting year, 2020. So the Republicans, they get their chance to try to redraw fucked up districts that can be litigated for the next decade. And just like they do all the time on purpose, they're going to do that. And I think North Carolina is getting another district. We're going to get another representative in Congress, New York or Illinois. Somebody's losing one up there.
Yeah, stop moving here.
And we're getting
quit moving here. There's no good restaurants here. People can't drive here. The weather sucks. Taxes are high. Quit moving here. Stop.
Right. So this bill that's being proposed, I think Pricey Harrison of our own part of the world is the lead person here. It would allow the citizens to vote on whether we want to have an independent body do redistricting. It isn't
boo.
Think about that. It just would allow us to vote on the idea.
I just want people to vote on whether there's gay marriage or whether a transgender person can use what bathroom. That's the only stuff I want people to vote on.
Right.
I don't care about this shit. This is not.
But keep in mind, this would not take effect until the next time there's redistricting. That's 10 years from now. So Republicans suck so bad that they cannot do what is the best thing, clearly, for democracy, for good government, for fairness, for all those things that they pretend that they are for, which they're, of course, 100% against because it threatens their power. 10 years from now. And we'll see whether that makes it through the legislative process at all or whether it gets killed by the usual suspects.
Just a little bit more on this article. Kyle McKenzie is with the Kochs, and he told the group that the legislation's opponents would have to rely on Republicans in the Senate, where the bill is now under debate, to use under the dome type strategies, meaning legislative maneuvers like that filibuster, because turning public opinion against it would be incredibly difficult. He said, McKinsey did, that the Koch-funded group had invested substantial resources to see if we could find any message that would activate and persuade conservatives on this issue. They haven't been able to find anything. It's very easy to use the, hey, billionaires are buying elections thing. As it turns out, Brad, that resonates with both conservatives, liberals, and people who identify as neither of those. So we just can't have this kill the bill, kill the bill, kill the. And that was the message that they had on January the 8th. 2 days after, people tried to murder Mike Pence.
It doesn't matter, Britt. They're still going to vote against it as a block, and there aren't going to be 50 votes that are going to part of the Republican caucus would be 10 of them. They need 10 plus 50 Democrats
right.
to get it through with the 60. So I don't know whether they can even do this with just the reconciliation 50 vote thing. So what you're saying and what Jane Mayer is writing is 100% true, but we've been down this road before. And if I recall, when the whole Merrick Garland thing came up and Mitch McConnell immediately snarled, we ain't going to fucking vote on this guy. Right? The first inclination was an article kind of like this one, which said, oh, the American people, they know fair. They know this is ridiculous. They don't support that. And it did not matter one iota. It is when you are a party, a shrinking minority party that feels the walls closing in, you don't care about public opinion. Public opinion means nothing. It means nothing to you. It is all you care about is making sure that plaque is on that door in that building, in that city, in that capital. That's all that matters to you. Nothing else matters. You don't care.
I'm trying to look at I'm trying to look at some of the arguments now against HR1 and what Republicans have made. They're saying it's a direct attack on free speech and federalism. That's one of the arguments that they're trying to make. They cannot win. Again, this is just like everything else. They can't win the war based on the votes, so they have to game the system. It's the same thing.
And by the way, I have a new rule. This is kind of my own little Godwin's law, which that one's the one that in any online discussion, this is a 20-year-old law, but it still holds. Any online discussion, anytime someone invokes Hitler, the discussion blows up.
Right, the guy you lose.
That doesn't count anymore.
Yeah.
I think we blew that one out of the water, and even the guy that came up with it said no. But my rule is any discussion of anything where the word federalism is used means you've lost the argument, because no one knows what federalism means. They think that federalism means the federal government tells you what to do, don't they? Right?
Yeah.
They don't know that federalism means that the federal government does what it's assigned to do, and the states get to do what they're assigned to do. And anything that the federal government is specifically assigned to, the states get to do. Now, because that used to be called states' rights, which is how they tried to campaign and still campaign against integration of schools and everything. What about my state's right to tell the federal government to fuck off? What about federalism? See, it confuses the argument. Because,
it does.
I don't want the federal government telling my state what to do because I believe in federalism. Right. It's a terrible word, and it doesn't help any kind of argument. So I say that if the Republicans, in their attempt to attack HR1, what's it called? The For the People's right, whatever it's called. If they're using the word federal, they've lost. They have. They totally lost the argument.
If that's your argument, yeah.
Right. They've lost the argument, but they may win the war, and this may not become law. It may not, but clearly, it's the right thing to do. Pretty interesting. We talked about Coke and a Koch brother. in the same podcast. That
That's
doesn't
right.
happen very often.
Who does
That
that?
doesn't-
Ladies and gentlemen, where do you get that sort of
Right.
amazing analysis?
And by the way, how come nobody talks about the dead Koch brother still contributing lots of money?
I don't know.
It's terrible if I use a dead person to vote right now, but can a dead Koch brother still
Well,
control?
look, I mean, if Hugo
Control
Chavez can
elections
still
in the state.
Hugo Chavez can still control elections, the dead Koch brother can still give money.
By the way, that I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of the early albums, I think by the Flying Burrito Brothers, was called "The Dead Koch Brother."
The dead Koch brother.
Yeah, check that one out. It was a good one. It was a real good one.
Isn't John Belushi the dead Koch brother? Oh, that's different.